That's it? Nothing else?
We're going to get right to it.
So when we were running for governor, I said there are a couple things we got to do to get this state moving again, since we haven't added any net new jobs in 30 or 40 years. I said we got to get our fiscal house in order. We have to speed up our transportation system. I heard that really from every business leader I talked to, and I heard that from every labor leader that I talked to. And today we have business leaders and labor leaders standing shoulder to shoulder because they know what this means for the state. And those two things are related, by the way. When it comes to getting our fiscal house in order, we inherited a big budget deficit. We got that balanced. We got that balanced without raising taxes. But we also have some structural deficits. And one of those deficits is in the Special Transportation Fund. That Special Transportation Fund, which funds a lot of our maintenance and upgrades for transportation around the state, is going to be underwater in deficit by 2025. The reason for that is not malfeasance. It's just that the gasoline tax is slowly going down every year, and our maintenance costs are going up every year, and our interest and principal costs. So that's unsupportable. So the first thing we had to do is fix the Special Transportation Fund. And we've done that, going into the 2030s. And then some of you may say, well, don't fix it with, new revenues. Why don't you just cut spending? Why don't you just cut some more? Well, one of the things we found over the last 10 years is we have not been doing the maintenance we've got to do on our roads and bridges. And that's why the Federal Department of Transportation is saying we have a very high percentage of our roads, quote, not in a state of good repair. It doesn't mean they're dangerous, but it means they're not in a state of good repair. It's costing us hundreds of millions of dollars a year just to maintain these old roads. Look at the viaduct right over there with the concrete falling down. What Joe Giletti's is trying to do just to keep these things going. So we have to maintain them in a state of good repair. Or the Federal Department of Transportation has been pretty clear. They said there'll be some penalties. You may not get as much federal funding as you had before. We may direct that. So we cannot shortchange maintenance, and it's a public safety issue. As I said this morning, in my town, I went over that Mayanus River Bridge with my wife, Annie, the same day that it eventually went down. That's not going to happen in this state. We're not going to let it happen in this state, but it only we prevent that by making the investments we need. And finally, a state of good repair also allows us to speed up our roads, speed up our rail, end the gridlock that is really slowing down economic growth and opportunity, not to mention what an amazing difference in the quality of life that means. Let me give you an example, just for rail. We've scaled back in this CT 2030. It's not as bold as what I had proposed 6 months ago. I got some frank feedback for the legislature that that was a bridge too far. But we have to do some things. We have to fix our Special Transportation Fund and invest in the future. In rail, we're going to have over $5 billion. That's going to not get us to 30-30-30. 30-30-30 was 30 minutes. Hartford to New Haven, 30 minutes down to Stanford, 30. But we can take a good 10 to 15 minutes off of the commute on each of those links. Right now, the Naugatuck Valley, when it comes to rail service, is a bit of a dead end. And what that means is there's very slow and erratic rail service going all the way to Waterbury. Our plan fixes that, has two-way rail service, a lot more frequent, opening up the Naugatuck Valley to a growth, development, and opportunity. Our rail plan not only speeds it up for those areas, but also provides new rail cars that are faster and more frequent. So all the shoreline lease going down to New London will be faster, cleaner, and by the way, with a 4G and then 5G Wi-Fi. So you're no longer wasting time as you're going on the rail. We have to do the same thing on our roads and bridges. What's going on? In previous drafts, everybody has said we have a bit of a capacity problem on our roads. We need a new lane in each direction, a new lane on 95, a new lane on 91. We found out that's not what the problem is. The problem really is we have some severe choke points that were built into the design of these highways many years ago. And if we fix those choke points, we can dramatically improve commuting times, making it so much easier for you to get to work, making it so much easier if you're a dad stopping your kid off at school, you still can get to work on time, gives you a little more time at home, what that means in terms of quality of life. And I think you saw a little bit of what we can do just over the last 6 months on I-84 between Waterbury and Hartford. We didn't add a new lane on the entire highway there, but we did open up about 2 3/4 miles of choke point there, expanded that a little bit. That's saving on average 25, 27 minutes each way every day. And that's what we can do on I-95 in the, down in Fairfield County. That's what we can do in Charter Oak on the way into Hartford, as well as we fixing bridges that make things a lot safer. These are incredible opportunities to get this state going again. And everybody I've talked to, and believe me, we've been talking to the legislative leaders on both sides of the aisle. They've seen all of our numbers. They see exactly what we're trying to accomplish with this. And generally, people have said, look, I agree with you. I think that I see the need. I know why it's a priority. I know what you got to do with this. I generally agree with the numbers. I just don't necessarily want to pay for it, or I don't want to pay for it the way you want to pay for it. And okay, I'm a business guy. How do you want to pay for it? And then we can find a way to compromise. Well, right now, there's 2 plans. One is called Prioritized Progress, which is $700 million a year in additional borrowing. I think that would, that's not suitable when it comes to the Department of Transportation down in Washington. They want an independent, reliable revenue stream, and nor can we just borrow our way out of this mess. That's been a failed policy of this state for many, many, many years. I'm listening for other ideas, and if the legislature has a better idea on how to pay for it, I'm all ears. In the meantime, I think you know, and if you go to CT 2030, you'll be able to see exactly all the projects we've got, when they're scheduled to come online, what that means in terms of your commute by car, what that means in terms of your commute by rail. We've got 14 bridges that we're going to repair and get them up to speed. We have a user fee on each of those 14 bridges. That user fee is tied to the TIFIA federal loan that we get. And all the money from that user fee goes to pay off the federal bond. It's historically cheap money. It's 2% or less. This is an historic opportunity to take advantage of where we are in the financial markets. And more importantly, it's a historic opportunity for us to turn around the state that's been not moving forward for a long time. And I think it does it in a fiscally responsible way, so we keep our fiscal house in order, and it also makes sure that our transportation system is ready for the 21st century in a way that you can count upon. I'm going to be hanging around to take any questions you've got, but who's up next, Susan?
And up next is our great DOT Commissioner, Joe Giletti, who has been the architect of Connecticut 2030.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to stand here today with Governor Lamont and Lieutenant Governor Byswitz and so many other leaders from both the business side, leaders that are with us in the department. And what I want to say is that we believe we now have a proposal that's transformative. The governor started off by telling me the only way out of our problems here is to rebuild our infrastructure and make it work better. We've been looking for a fair and forward-looking vision for Connecticut's transportation and future through the year 2030. It may sound like a long way off, but as someone who's been working on long-range policies and projects for the last several decades, and I'm constantly reminded it's over 40 years I've been in this, all right, I can assure you that this is not. Our rail infrastructure is among the oldest, not only in the country, but among other places throughout the world. The earliest version of the New Haven line was serving Connecticut in the 1850s, so by 2030, when this plan is done, we'll be closing on 200 years of railroading service in our state, and some of those bridges that were put in under the McKinley administration. So when we talk about the highway bridges, it's even worse when we talk about the railroad bridges. Today, we are providing over 40 million passenger trips per year on the busiest line in the country, on the New Haven line. We have invested more than $4 billion in our rail system over the last 10 years in the form of new rail cars and other opportunities. On the bus side, I'm sorry, 1 second. Overhead power lines, new tracks, ties, double track, and new rail maintenance facilities. But our problem has been that we've piecemealed all of that. I've mentioned this before. We can't keep doing business this way. You can't start a catenary project 40 years ago and not understand what the impact of that has been. So when a governor turns to me and says, Joe, if we can't do 30, 30, 30, what can we do going forward? And that's what we've been looking at, is an honest evaluation of what can we do. As we unveil 2030, we are on the brink of investing billions more. We will be doing this through a combination of traditional state bonds, the Special Transportation Fund, and an innovative federal financing program called Railroad Rehabilitation and Improvement Financing, or RIF loans. Just a few highlights. We're talking about $5 billion for the 3 major rail lines, the New Haven line, the Hartford line, and Shoreline East. The New Canaan and Danbury and Waterbury branches will also see track and station improvements. And we expect to improve the travel times through the track improvements and upgrades, slicing as much as 10 minutes off of the schedule initially. We're acquiring 132 new state-of-the-art rail cars, 30 electric dual power and diesel locomotives. These new locomotives will not only meet the latest environmental standards, but they will be faster and more reliable. And we plan to spend $140 million on upgrades for maintenance facilities. Track improvements, rehabilitation of the bridges, carrying those tracks are also funded. On the bus side, where we also are providing more than 40 million trips a year, we plan to restructure service in the New Haven, Bridgeport, and Stamford Route 1 corridor. This will include priority bus lanes, new traffic signals, new bus stations. The new buses will have Wi-Fi and USB charging. Diesel buses will be replaced with electric buses. And we also plan traffic signal upgrades. It's amazing that when I walk in that we don't have all of our signals coordinated into a central location, but that's part of what we're looking to go for, because we're aiming for faster, more frequent, and more reliable service to increase ridership and improve the customer experience. Our mission to serve the public by embracing change and offering transportation choices to strengthen communities and the economies and the quality of life for Connecticut citizens. I want to extend my thanks to Governor Lamont and Lieutenant Governor Bysewicz for their tremendous leadership. I will be available for talking, but I also want to talk about, just for a second, you've heard him talk about the changes on the highways and how we stood out there talking about the highways. You know, you can't do projects like changing out 2 bridges on 95 in Stamford. And the fact that we did it over 2 weekends, met the schedules that were supposed to be there, and saved the riding public that goes through there 2.5 years of lane closures on 95. This is the way we have to do business going forward, and we've put together a plan that ensures that going forward, and thank you for your time.
Commissioner, thank you so much. It is my pleasure to introduce the president of the AFL-CIO, which combined has a membership of more than 220,000 people in our beautiful state, President Sal Luciano.
Thank you. We are fully behind Governor Lamont's Connecticut 2030 proposal. Fixing our infrastructure is not a partisan issue. That's why labor is standing with the governor and the business community today to call upon the legislature to summon the political courage to get this done. This proposal will lead to faster commutes and will clear up congestion on our busiest highways and bridges. With shorter commutes and more dependable travel, Connecticut will see increased productivity and economic growth. But what's more, it will directly create tens of thousands of jobs every year in a state that is lagging in job creation. Let's be clear. Everyone agrees that we need to get this done. Our highways, bridges, trains, and airports are all in need of urgent repairs or upgrading. How bad can it be? 57% of our roads that are eligible for federal aid are considered to be in poor condition. Over 33% of our bridges are rated structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. The main question is how we finance it. Well, you can raise taxes, you can borrow the money with interest, or you can charge user fees. The first 2 options fall exclusively on Connecticut residents. Connecticut 2030 is financed by borrowing money with exceptionally low interest rates and tolls where a significant portion will be paid for by out-of-state commuters. Now that seems to make sense to labor. Either we have Connecticut residents pay for all of it, or we get out-of-state residents to help foot the bill. Every other state in the East Coast has already figured this out. It doesn't matter if they're a red state or a blue state, controlled by Democrats or Republicans, every one of them have some sort of system for paying for these roads. And we have been assured by the Lamont administration that this work will be built using project labor agreements. That's important because it will protect taxpayers by eliminating costly delays due to labor conflicts or a shortage of skilled workers. PLAs are done on time and on budget, and they also ensure hiring is done locally and the next generation of construction workers are given on-the-job training. Connecticut 2030 is comprehensive, it's smart, and it's achievable. So let's get it done.
Sal, thank you so much. The governor and I have been very pleased to work in partnership with our state's business leaders, and it is my pleasure to introduce H. Darrell Harvey, who is the CEO of the Ashforth Company in Stamford.
Thanks very much, Susan, and glad to be back here again 6 months later working with you, Governor, and thanks to you, Joe, for sticking on this. I think you've produced a terrific plan. As Susan said, I'm Darrell Harvey, co-CEO of the Ashforth Company, a real estate company based in Stamford, and we invest nationally. So we're frankly always comparing investing in Connecticut with its future to investing in other parts of the country where the growth is multiple times. I am also on the board of the Business Council of Fairfield County, former chairman of the board. I was also a chairman of the Stamford Hospital Board, which is the biggest employer in Stamford. So I'm well aware with what's happened in the state, what's happened in our area. The Business Council has in effect been studying this issue very carefully for about 20 years. I said at another earlier press conference 6 months ago, we had a report done by Michael Gallus on the future of Connecticut. He said, if you don't fix, this is 1999, he said, if you don't fix your transportation system, your transportation infrastructure, Connecticut will become an economic cul-de-sac and you'll have no growth. He said, maybe you'll get some growth out as far as the Stamford area, but then it's just going to stop. I've seen it happen in other areas, and you have to do something about your transportation infrastructure. In my view, that's exactly what happened. He was incredibly prescient in predicting that, and that was what kicked us off. Over the last 10 years, we've studied it even more intensely. Over the last 5 years, the Business Council has made fixing the transportation infrastructure one of its 2 top initiatives, the other being human capital and the growth of human capital in the state and providing a workforce for all our businesses. And those 2 do tie together directly because our single greatest asset, we believe, is our workforce, and we've got to be able to move it around. We believe this plan, conceptually, it's just come out. We are entirely in favor of it conceptually. It entirely aligns with all of our research on what needs to be done. We'd always love to do more, but this is a tremendous step. We think it has to be multimodal. We've learned that going back to Michael Gallus's time. We think mass transit is absolutely critical because of the way 95 operates in our area, so we've been very focused on rail. We were initially the people who came forward with the 30-30-30 program, got an outside consultant to come in and say, you can do this. Of course you can do it. It's done elsewhere around the world all the time, but you can do it, and you can do it in stages, and there's some early stages where you can spend some money very well and achieve a disproportionate result. And those measures that we've suggested are built into the plan, and Joe has built them in. So from an employment point of view, for retaining businesses, for attracting businesses, we think the lifeblood of the state is its workforce, and we're hamstringing it right now. We're preventing it from moving around the state. And I'm talking over the whole state. We've got many more people trying to come down to our area for jobs. We lose people because they just can't stand the commute. Got to provide our shuttle services from the train because they won't get on the roads. If we can fix the trains a bit, you start freeing up the roads a bit. The changes that you're talking about, we're pinpointing the areas that really need. Everyone knows when they commute that they'll hit a certain spot and it just stops. You don't have to do the whole thing. Any commuter knows. You just can sit them down and have a focus group, and you know in no time it's that damn intersection at such and such. If you would just, excuse me for the language. That's just I've got a lot of frustrated employees, and so we're very aware of that, and we know that's happening elsewhere around the state. But simply put, we think we're preventing our greatest resource, our human capital, from being able to move around the state. And this solution for this, and I got to echo what you said, Sal, this has to be bipartisan. I mean, it's very hard watching politics play the role that it is on this issue. I said to someone earlier this morning, sort of like the foundation of your house. This is the foundation, this is the infrastructure of the state. We're way behind the rest of the country. We're way behind the rest of the world on this. When people come to your house, they don't drive in and say, God, you got a wonderful foundation there, you know, I really look at it, it looks fantastic. But boy, do they notice it if your foundation is gone and your house is starting to tip and so forth, and you've got to do something about it, or you got a major problem. Well, that's what we're facing right here. Let's play politics on other stuff besides our foundation of our state, the infrastructure of our state that allows the people to move freely within our state. It's, in our opinion, Business Council, it's the most critical thing that we could do to get this state going again. We hope we can do it, break through the political log jams on this. And the last point I'll make is, in studying it very carefully, because we are business guys, we look very hard at funding. I fund projects all the time in real estate. And if someone has a better way of funding it than this sort of plan, conceptually, the first plan was good also, as I supported that, we'd be very glad to know it. No one wants to spend the money on the foundation of their house because they're never going to get credit for it. But when you do it, you try and do it with the really quality labor, get it done properly, and finance it and pay for it as efficiently as you can. We cannot come up, as business guys, with a better way of financing these types of improvements than what the governor's plan is proposing. The best financing you can get is from the federal government. The way you get the finance, all the other states have figured this out, the way you get that is with a sustainable stream of income. I know that hurts, but that's the best way to fix the foundation of this state. So we're very much in favor of this. We look forward to working with you. And again, we please, legislative action we need to be able to release the greatest asset we have, which is our working capital, which is very stymied moving around. Thank you.
Darrell, thank you so much. Speaking of quality labor, it is my pleasure to introduce the president of the building trades, David Roche, representing the people who will do the work.
Thank you. Wow. Well, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Dave Roach, president of the Connecticut State Building and Construction Trades Council, and I represent close to 30,000 members and families in Connecticut. We are very bipartisan and a diverse organization. First, I want to thank Governor Lamont and his staff for putting together a great transportation plan. I'm very fortunate. I get to travel around the country, and I visited a lot of different states in the U.S., and I try to focus on best practices when I visit these areas. And one of the questions that always comes up to me is, how'd you do it? Where'd you start? And the answer was simple: planes, trains, and automobiles. Right? You have to have a transportation plan if you're going to kickstart an economy. It works all over the country. It's a proven fact. I've looked at this transportation plan, and I can tell you it will do all that and more. CT 2030 will create 26,000 jobs a year for over a 10-year plan. For a state that has lagged in job growth, this is critical to get us moving again. And my members are ready to get to work and rebuild our state's crumbling infrastructure. I frequently travel through Mass and New York. Every time I drive down the Mass Pike, I contribute to their state's economy. We help pay for the new Tappan Zee Bridge every time we cross over it. It's a beautiful bridge. It's time that those visitors to this great state of Connecticut pay their fair share to drive on our highways. I urge the residents of Connecticut to go to the CT 2020 website and look at it. If you want to talk about transparency, here it is. It's right in front of you. It's easy to see. It's easy to navigate. I've done it myself. This is a common sense approach that will address all the issues and concerns residents of this state should have. I'm asking the Connecticut elected officials, I'm asking you, put the party politics to the side. It's time to put us back to work. It's time to rebuild Connecticut. Stop telling the constituents what they want to hear and tell them the truth, because that's what courage is and that's what leadership is, and that's what Connecticut needs. Thank you.
Dave, thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Vice President of the Fairfield County Business Council, Joe McGee.
Thank you. You know, standing here, I just had a thought. The politics of this is fascinating. You've got labor, you've got business, and you have the governor all aligned. This is a big deal. And the reason this is a big deal and goes beyond party politics is because this is about our economic future. So let me just go back quickly. So I was Weiker's Commissioner of Economic Development in the 90s, right? It's a long time. That's where you and I got to get to know one another, which was interesting in those years. Here's the deal. We knew in the 90s if we didn't invest in infrastructure, particularly transportation, rail and bus and highway, we would have slow economic growth. Our companies were telling us that. So Pitney Bowes in Stamford had 8,000 employees. They now have 200. And the reason is, yes, there are business changes, but the other issue is you can't get a workforce into Fairfield County as easily as you could. So the companies were telling us for 20 years, you have to fix this. Your housing prices are high, your commutes are high. You've got to do something, and we didn't. Things were so good for so long, we avoided this. And now, listen to this. The wealthiest state, the most educated state in America, has a railroad system, the main line to Boston, in which 4 bridges are 100 years old. Our great-great-grandfathers spent the money and built those things to last for 100 years. We, this generation, is not going to do the same. I mean, think about this generationally. This is our future. And in looking at this plan, I want to thank the governor for sticking with this. This is not easy, having been kind of around these fights in the past. To get knocked down and then get off the canvas is a sign of a leader. And to have a new plan, this plan will go forward because there's not a legitimate other option. We have got to do this. And I also want to say to the Commissioner of Transportation, this is a good plan. This is what was missing the first time through. And what's in here, which is very interesting, is not just the 14 bridges and those projects, but they've also gone into the congestion in the towns, in the Bridgeports. There's more projects in here than just 14. And these local projects that address congestion really make the whole system work a lot better. So this is a real good piece of work, and we're very proud to support you. So thank you.
So we're now done with the formal part of our speaking program. And ladies and gentlemen of the media, you have all of these experts to answer your questions.
Governor Lamont, Senator Pisano has told us that they're working on an alternative plan and that you have expressed openness towards receiving. Is that accurate?
I think that is accurate. My world, as long as the numbers add up and they're real, I'm ready to listen. And we've had good constructive conversations with the Senate Democrats as well as the Republicans. Right now, there's no other plan on the table. This is a plan that adds up and fixes the problems in front of us. And if they have another idea, time to bring it forward.
Governor, why aren't you proposing, at least I didn't see, perhaps you are, the income tax break that you floated in July, I believe?
Mainly because we have scaled this back in a dramatic way, and we've been very finite about what we can afford to do. I've got to fix the special transportation system. It's going under. I got to get our roads and bridges up to a state of good repair, and I got to clean up all these bottlenecks. Those are my 3 top priorities. The main thing we have done to take care of folks is you don't pay more than once when you go through a gantry. So if you're a local delivery guy going back and forth 5 times a day, you pay once. And I think that was something that really addressed the need of a lot of our small business people.
There doesn't seem to be anything here to address the trust issue that Senator Pisano also spoke about and I've asked you about in the past. There's a serious trust issue about these toll user fees, pardon me, being removed in 27 years, if we all last that long.
The trust issue is what Joe McGee said. Politicians telling people everything they want to hear. We can fix all these roads and bridges, won't cost you a dime. Mexico's going to pay for it, whatever it might be. And, you know, I think you've got a group of people up here who know we have a plan. The plan adds up. The numbers are real. I think you've heard from business and labor side by side, shoulder to shoulder. This is the most important thing we can do to get this state going again. And that's how you restore trust. Keep your word.
Have you done analysis of whether this new rate and whether the new locations for these gantries would push traffic to the local roads and cause congestion at the local roads?
Well, first of all, the trucks is illegal. They can't do that. They've got to stay on to their transportation destination, or else they're playing games. We've been very careful. Most of these, as you know, Christine, are on bridges, so it's not an easy work around there. When it comes to the Gold Star Bridge, it's pretty much tough to get around there. And secondly, we do have a plan in place to provide 5% of those revenues, to your question, Paul, to those local affected municipalities so that they get some support for you know, having that congestion relieved in their neighborhoods.
Governor, how did you arrive at the 20% discount number? Are there going to be additional discounts to that, possibly for low-income families?
I arrived at the 20% discount number because I didn't want to play games with my fellow governors. Most of them offer a 20% discount for their local residents via their Easy Pass. I don't want to get into a trade war with New York. I thought that was the fairest way to do it. And frankly, like a lot of my neighbors, the big out-of-state tractor-trailer trucks will pay 7 times that amount. Again, that's in keeping with what our neighbors are doing as well.
But hold on, for low-income families, would there be an additional discount?
We got the 20% discount for you know, Connecticut residents right now. We've got the cut for local business people who are going back and forth one gantry at a time. And I'll be able to listen to the legislature. If they have some things they want us to do, as long as the numbers add up, we're ready to negotiate.
Governor, speaking of New York, this toll reader that could go up on 684, did you consult with Governor Cuomo's office about that? Because that's essentially their road. It goes through Connecticut for a mile.
I think I'd probably ask Joe Giletti on that one.
Well, first off, it's nice for me that both governors came together a couple of times now, and Governor Cuomo made it very clear that I was to continue talking with the president of Metro North to make sure that we're aligned on all the things that can be done on the New Haven line. That bridge is a Connecticut bridge. It's, again, to go and maintain that bridge. I'm sure there's going to be other discussions that are being held on it, but understand that it is a bridge that we're responsible for the maintenance on, and that's why it fits in.
Consulted, since that's basically going to affect their commuters.
I would turn around and say to you that there's been numerous discussions with the governor about not only that bridge, but some potential other bridges that could be done in the future. So yes, I would say there's a consultation, but I don't want to turn around and say to you that that specific bridge was discussed. It will be discussed as we're going forward.
Governor, the history of tolling in this country is that, yes, you can remove tolls once a bond is paid off, but as a practical matter, by the time you do that, perhaps the bridge or the road that the tolls are on are ready for another round of maintenance. So are you going to be selling this as saying these tolls are indeed temporary, or are you going to sort of put that to the side and say, no, once these tolls are up, as a practical matter, you can expect them to remain?
On the conversations with New York, I'll tell you, we've had more conversations with New York in the last 10 weeks than we've had in the last 10 years. We are working together. Doesn't do me any good to speed up rail service to the New York border, then have it slow to a crawl into Grand Central. We're going to work on that together. We have a commitment from the governor on that. You know, the question again was on tolls. Are they temporary? Right now, the tolls are tied to the TIFIA loans. The TIFIA loans are 27 years. By contract, every dime from that toll revenue has to go to pay off that TIFIA loan. That TIFIA loan is fixed, and so are the toll rates over the period of that 27 years. There's no adjusting that price going forward. Your question, Paz, is, all right, what happens in year 27? Who's to say, whatever year that would be? I'll be in some senior center if I'm around.